has this ever happened to you? So you begin working, there's a task to do, you begin doing it. But very quickly you start thinking, maybe I should do something else. Maybe this other thing is actually the top priority. So you're on one task, you change to the other. But then you begin doing the other and you think, but maybe the other one was the actual priority. And you start bouncing between them. Quickly, you start getting overwhelmed, a bit anxious. You notice that there's not that much progress happening because you're just bouncing between tasks. Now, when you become overwhelmed, you become anxious, the mind will probably tell you, oh, you should probably take a break. It's getting a bit too much. Just take a break. Go on TikTok, go on YouTube, just watch a video. It's going to be fine. And then you go, you watch the video, you relax for a bit and it seems like it will be fine. But then you come back to the work, you sit down again and you realize it's even worse. You lost momentum, the feelings are still there, and now what do? Maybe you even go ahead, try to do more work, try to do something that's a bit easier, a task that is not a priority, but it's still work, and you keep doing this, and then the day is over. And then you look back and you realize that it felt like you worked a lot, it felt like you did a lot of things, you're tired, but when you look at what actually, or how it actually progressed, not much progress happened. You look at it from the beginning of the day to the end, and it's like things are pretty much at the same level or just a little bit above. Now, you are not alone in this. It is more common than you think every week, especially when I do a Q&A on Instagram. It's like one of the top things people ask. It's like, how do I focus? How do I just sit down and do this one thing? Well, today we're going to answer that, but before we're going to look at why this happens to you, because we need to understand first before we fix it. But we will understand, we will fix it, and now let's dive right into it. And to illustrate my point, I want you to visualize or to imagine that you're in a boat in the middle of the ocean. And let's say in front of you there's an island, and in the back of you or behind you is another island. And you want to visit both, but obviously you can't be in both at the same time. But in your mind, you still haven't quite decided if you want to go first to the one in front or the one that's behind you. So let's say you start going to the one in front. And you start rowing, it's going, you're getting a bit closer to it, but then you think, but maybe I just want to go to the other one first and then come to this later. The sun, maybe it's starting to set already and I want to enjoy the other one while the sun is still out, so I'm going to go to the other one first. And then you turn around, you start rowing. But then you think the same thing to the other one. And you keep doing this, and what you're doing essentially is you're doing a lot of effort. You're putting a lot of effort in, but no progress is happening. You're just going in circles essentially. And this is exactly what is happening in your work, and the reason is the same. And when I say work, it can be your actual job, it can be your studies, it can be your business. It's very common. And the reason is because you haven't committed to an island. You haven't chose where to go first, what to complete first before you move on. And the reason why most people struggle with this, and you'd be surprised at how many people actually struggle with this, the main reason is that it's hard to make a commitment. Because when you choose one, when you choose an island to go to, it means that you can't be going to the other one. It means saying and acting in a way that is putting one thing over the other. And very often when I tell people like, oh, you should prioritize, you should actually define, they say, but they're equally important. These two tasks, these two habits are equally important, so I cannot choose, so I'm going to do both at once. And then what ends up happening, as we saw, is that none of them get done. And this is the critical point, which is it is better to prioritize incorrectly and make a commitment than to make no commitment at all and have no priorities. Because even if you get the order all wrong, but you do one thing at a time, and your mind and your focus and every single part of you is just put into that one thing, you're going to go through the list much faster. The other person likely is not going to do anything until the deadline arrives. And you may have experienced this. There's a project coming up, a work that you have to deliver something. Let's say it's coming up in 3 weeks. What will happen to a lot of you, maybe you as well, is that you say to yourself, yeah, I'm going to begin doing all these things. But then you can't just begin because you have to plan and to decide and to all the homework that you have to do before you begin the work. And that's uncomfortable. That's the hard part a lot of times. Just the uncomfortable work that is very important is the one that we don't want to get to. And so a lot of people, they will delay until a point where the panic is so high and so big, usually like 2 to 3 days before, that they're forced to sit down and work. But then the work's never that good. The work is never the best they could be putting forward. And then they end up very tired, very stressed, very exhausted, and overall not happy with the work they put forth. And this happens not only with the habits and the actions, but before that, because this is a consequence of, even before that, of understanding and clearly committing to the goal. Because someone that very clearly understands what the goal is, what's trying to be achieved, and they're committed to that goal, and they will not stop until that is achieved, that person can very easily understand if something's a priority or if it's not a priority. The problem is that a lot of times we're not fully committed to the goal and the goal is not clear. We say, yeah, I want to get in better shape, maybe with this workout program. But then as soon as things start going a bit wrong or we hit a plateau, the goal is not clear. I don't understand, am I trying to build muscle, to lose fat? How much of that? I don't understand. So then it becomes very easy to go and search for the next shiny thing. The new secret program, the new method, the new diet. But deep down, those are not the things that are going to give you the results you want. What is going to give you the results you want is commitment, discipline, and focus with 2 to 3, 4, 5, very few habits in the general context of everything that if done correctly and consistently over a long period of time are going to give you the results you want. This is true for pretty much every pursuit. And obviously some are going to be more complex, some are going to be less complex. When you look at things from a big overhead view, this becomes clearly true. Now, before we get to the actual solution, I want to dive deeper into the true issue here. And before we do so, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to drop a like. It really helps out, pushing the video and getting it to more people. But the deeper issue here with not choosing and not committing, whether that's to the goal initially and then to the habits and the things you have to do, is that, or the reason why it happens is you think that by not committing, every option will remain open to you. Because in a lot of ways, beginning with the goal and then the habits, of course, it's like you're looking at all these doors that are open. And you're looking at the possibilities of going into one and then the other and then the other. And maybe you take 1 to 2, 3 steps into one of them, but you never close the door behind you. You never say, this is just what I'm going to do. You always leave it open, and then you go back, go into another one, and no progress is made. Now, what they don't tell you, but you should be aware of, is that if you delay long enough, eventually the doors will be closed for you. One at a time, these opportunities will begin shutting off. One door here, one door there, one door there. And if you delay long enough, especially on your goals, if you delay long enough, you'll just be an old, sad man with regrets. Someone that never committed to one door. Someone that never chose a path and said, this is what I'm going to do. And because you couldn't choose, you couldn't commit to one door and close it behind you, life closed them all for you. However, if you're watching this video, I would imagine you're between 18 to 35 maximum usually. If that is you, you still have time. Not as much time maybe as you'd like to have, but you still have plenty of time. If you start to claim it today, if you begin looking at your time as the most precious thing you have, and if you do so and you're ready to commit, this is what you'll do. Now, we're gonna get to the more specifics of why you probably clicked this video of just, okay, there's work I have to do, I can't commit, I'm always distracted. We're gonna get to that. But it all starts with the goal. And I know a lot of you will say like, oh, but can we just get to the, how do I do this task? But it's never just that. Usually these problems stem from something much deeper. And just if you have this reaction of like, but I don't want to get to that, usually that's the exact thing you need to get to. It's that uncomfortable thing to solve. So the first step is actually looking at if it's your job or a business or your studies. And a lot of times the goal will be set for you. But you need to be clear. You need to understand what it is. Is it a project coming up for work? Clearly write out, what is the project? What am I trying to deliver here? Is it an exam in school? Write out what the exam is. What is the grade I'm after? Is it your business? Then that's all up to you. Write what the goal is that you're after and make it clear, because for the job and studies, there's a deadline to it. It's very specific. When we're left to our own devices, it's easier to be a bit more vague with it. Be clear, be specific. And the more specific you are, the more committed you are to it, because you need to be committed, as we talked about it. So whatever goal you write, you need to have the mindset of, I will not stop until this goal is achieved. That's the mindset you need to have. Once that goal is clear, it's identified, it's defined, it's in front of you, you've committed to it, you're gonna write everything you're currently doing together and everything you could do. can be in a random sheet of paper. Just write all these things by no really priority order. And then after you do that, and I talked about this before, but it's worth going over. That's what I mean to say. What you're then gonna do is begin prioritizing. If it's easier, begin from the least important. And you can just be like, okay, a lot of things you can just cross out because they don't matter. And then, go and see what is the least important, then the one that's a bit more important after that. And when you get to a point where it becomes difficult to actually choose and you're like, oh, there's 4, 5, 6 things here that, now I really need to think about. In all honesty, those are probably just the only things you should do. Because if you do them correctly and you just stick to them, they'll take all of your time. But we don't need to be that drastic yet. Once you start getting to that, when it becomes hard to actually prioritize, you'll probably get to a point where you'll start to say, but they're all equally important. This one is not more important than the other. And I was gonna say that may be true, but that cannot be true. Because the fact is you can only do, to do it correctly, you can only do one thing at a time. And by that reality, that means that one thing will necessarily be more important than the other because you need to do them in order. And as such, the best way to do this is to imagine you have a gun to your head and you have to choose. And you have to choose one of them to go undone forever. Now, I know you likely have to do it, but just be very drastic with it. Which of these two, and you begin with that, let's say spot number 6, I'm conflicted between 2. Which of these would I be fine or more fine with going undone forever? Whatever that is, that means that's the least priority of the 2. And then you write as a least. And then you can keep doing this, while there's confusion around it. And then once that is done, once you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many priorities are, what you realize, or what I want you to realize, is that usually a lot of the things that are written there don't matter. And if you think about it and you really go in your mind and you imagine like, what would happen if I never do this? You'd you would quickly realize that they don't matter. A lot of times it's just like productive procrastination where you're doing something, but it just does nothing for you. But, again, I know a lot of you are not going to be that drastic and just cutting it off. What you want to do is then schedule the priorities in order, if possible, in order on your day. So priority number 1 should be the first thing you do. Then number 2 should be the second thing you do, etc., etc., etc. And because you took the time to do this work, what's going to happen is that when you sit down and it's clear on your schedule what you have to do, and most importantly, you understand that this is a priority, your mind is free to just focus on that and not to worry about, should I do something else? Is this the right priority? Am I wasting my time? Because you've done the work already. You've done the work that your mind is trying to do in real time when you should just be working. And by doing that, what you realize is that you'll put much better work forward. You'll do it in less time, better, and overall you realize that progress will happen so much faster. But you have to do this work beforehand.